Thank you all for being with us up to now. Thank you for your perseverance and for staying to listen to the last part of the conference. A conference in which two of its permeating themes, I think, were the idea of resilience and the idea of Greece. The idea of Greece was permeating the conference, not just because the conference is taking place in Greece. Every presenter from overseas has been reading the news, has been reading about what is going on in Brussels. So I think in everyone's mind, Greece was a factor. Renzo Piano mentioned it, Gary Kasparov mentioned it, and most of our other participants. Not least, the announcement about the SGSP2, a new initiative by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation to tackle the Greek crisis, puts that attention on Greece in perspective. With regards to the idea of resilience, we had quite a few people that do extraordinary things here, and they do extraordinary research. And in order to do that research, they have to be resilient. I mean, Teresa Walton talked about HIV. She said, we have the drugs, we have the knowledge, now we have to persevere to fix things. Gary Kasparov talked about how making mistakes made him a better player and how he was resilient in improving his game and achieving what he has achieved. And Renzo Piano talked about the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, a project that requires a lot of resilience and a lot of love for all the people that work there to make it happen. But resilience is something that sometimes appears commonsensical, but when you think about it, it's not so much. So I took a step back and I started to think, what does resilience entail? And the first thing that came to mind is toughness. If someone is resilient, someone is tough. But like the dinosaurs were very tough, but they're extinct, they're not around anymore. There's no place for these great lizards in our times. So surely there has to be something that goes together with toughness to make someone resilient. The other thing that came to mind was the idea of adaptability. It seems that the idea of adaptability and resilience permeates quite a bit of environmental systems academia the last 2 years. It's a very interesting idea, but if someone thinks about it, it's a very tricky idea as well. Those of you that might have read the book by Robert Pirsing, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, will recall that the main character of the book takes a trip through the United States with his son, and along the way the motorbike breaks down. He has to find a way of fixing the motorbike and changes all its different parts. And the question arises, when does the motorbike that I've been riding change? When is it a different motorbike? If I change all the parts and slowly in time, does that still make it the same motorbike as it was before? If I retain the chassis or just general design parameters, is that still the same motorbike? I guess one could say that adaptability can be an issue within resilience to the extent that it retains some characteristics of the initial identity of the object or the person that tries to adapt. Thirdly, even if someone has toughness and adaptability, it seems that time plays a crucial role in how one applies resilience in achieving one's goals. We had a great speech by Marco Lambertini from WWF International. He showed us all these great graphs yesterday about how the rate of change in the growth of population, in the depletion of fish stock, is skyrocketing. For anyone that deals with finance, if those graphs were stock indices, that would be a totally overheated economy. So Mr. Lambertini's point was that the human race has been tough, has been adapting, but right now we face a crucial point in time when that if we want to remain on this earth, we have to change the way we do things. So in my mind, when I think about resilience, I think about toughness, adaptability, and the appropriate application of these two values within a specific time frame. Greece well, one can say that what Greece is going through at the moment has been an exercise in resilience. Whether we have been tough, adaptable enough, or too much, or whether we have misapplied the timing of our initiatives is something that we can discuss here with our panel. Mr. Veremis is co-founder and CEO of Upstream. Upstream is one of the largest mobile commerce platforms in the world, and it's happening here in Greece. Professor Gerolymatos is director of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies in Simon Fraser University, one of the most thriving Hellenic studies centers in the world. And hopefully, with you, we'll be able to shed some light on what are the next steps and how the whole Greek crisis can fit into the context of the third sector, philanthropy, and what we could expect for the next day. Professor Gerolymatos, since you deal with humanities, how unique is this crisis that Greece faces right now? Has there been such a crisis before?
Of course. I think from the beginning of the modern Greek state, there's been crisis after crisis, some small, some acute, some really great. I mean, we just have to think of the crisis of the occupation of World War II, the crisis of 1922, and the influx of over close to 2 million refugees, which taxed the very foundations of the Greek state, the Greek Civil War, the junta. We are good at having crises. There's no doubt about that.
And Mr. Veremis, how about the entrepreneurship environment in Greece? You're a young entrepreneur, very successful nevertheless. How do you find the current environment of doing business in Greece?
Greece has a long heritage of entrepreneurship. I think mostly it has to do with a drive for self-determination and refusal to conform to the central government or rules or laws. The shape it has taken in the sort of the latest chapter of the Greek history since the Second World War has been to produce very small-scale entrepreneurs, what in Greece we call the self-employed. And the problem has been that none of these entrepreneurial units have acquired any meaningful scale. So in Greece, you have a situation where a very large percentage of the economy, almost 80% of the economy, is driven by very small units or self-employed, has no scale. And without scale, de facto, that means you're probably inward-looking, so very, very few exports. So you're talking about a model that clearly has not worked and was fueled by loans up until 6-7 years ago. I would say that the environment for export-oriented businesses that produce products of, let's say, knowledge-based products or high value-adding services has always been very difficult in Greece. There's no culture of such companies. There's no history of such companies. And this was equally problematic before the crisis as well as during the crisis. The crisis has affected the technology ecosystem where my company operates actually in a positive manner, in the sense that a lot of young people who no longer have the choice to go into the gigantic public sector and also don't really have the option to go to effectively inward-looking Greek companies, importers, have been driven to build their own companies. And the number of startups in Greece was in 2010 were 16 startups that meet the definition of a technology company building a product for export with high value-adding prospects. The same number this year is approximately 250. So from 16 to 250 since 2010. There is certainly a positive impact in terms of the crisis having pushed highly skilled, very well-educated young people, at least in my sector, technology, to actually build their own companies.
And this is a very interesting take on how crisis can breed creation, and from a difficult situation, one can actually find avenues for creation and development. And I wonder if it is the same for Greek studies abroad. Are you in high demand? Or more now than before?
These days, certainly because of the crisis. But Hellenic studies abroad has been going through almost the same kind of demise as what's going on in Greece. It had an upsurge in the 1960s as, Greek communities wanted to maintain the language, and they established chairs of Greek language and literature. These did not last very long because they were servicing a very small minority. And in the universities that were put in, they did not have a real home. You know, most were in classics, and they failed to attract a large number of students. And it was getting very depressing about Greek studies in North America, at least. And I think the same is going on in Europe. Until the Stavros Niarchos Foundation stepped into the fray, and thanks to the foundation and André Drakopoulos, he established a new paradigm for Hellenic studies. I think we were the first experiment. Our program at Simon Fraser University, where we have the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies, in which we, with their help, we stepped outside the box. It wasn't just language anymore, or history, or literature. It was the combination of various disciplines, but rebooted in a different way using technology. Thanks to their support, we were able to develop courses online in language, in history, and culture, but also looked at Greek studies outside the small Greek community, but think of them as around the world, especially Asia. You know, we're positioned in Vancouver, which is halfway to China and halfway to Greece, interestingly enough. By going that route, we were able to do the following. We created the SNF New Media Lab, which develops cutting-edge technology, the most cutting-edge technology in educational technology. So all of a sudden, Greek studies, which used to be the little ghetto in the university, is the cutting-edge unit in the university that's developing software that is of use to the entire university. Secondly, by putting Greek language online up to a certain level, it made it possible for a lot of people to take Greek. You know, Greek language is an elective, as is German, as is Spanish. And most students, of course, have dominant courses which they have to take. By having it available any time of the day or the week, it exploded. Right now, we're teaching 150 students per term, 3 terms a year. And of course, with our technology, we're able to go into China, where I'm very proud to say, and I have a hard time explaining, we have 4,000 students taking Greek in China, and that's a number that's increasing. The other factor, of course, is the core discipline of Hellenic studies, history, literature, and Byzantine studies. And we define Hellenic studies as those things, right? Not to antiquity. We have found an administrative formula that Hellenic studies, to thrive and survive in a unique model, it has to be autonomous. It cannot depend on any department of classics, as usually the case, or another department. It has to be master of its own fate. It has to be able to encourage graduate studies, which I think the future is in Hellenic studies. And most importantly, it has to act as a feeder to other departments. So we have students coming to us from history, from international studies, from literature, even from the sciences. Those departments, because our courses are cross-listed, do not see us as competition, but they see us as an aid for their courses and their numbers to increase. So it has made Hellenic studies, even though it's not a very big autonomous unit, but a very vibrant and a very efficient one. And again, these were ideas that came in discussions with the foundations. And in fact, even this talk, the sustainability of Hellenic studies, was the idea of Stavros Vasilakis. I never thought of sustainability of Hellenic studies in that context.
And has there been a particular interest in Greek studies that is contextual on what is going on right now on the crisis, and how are you addressing that?
Only insofar as the media. People from various television and radio have been approaching myself and my colleagues to explain in Canada and in North America what's going on in Greece and why it's happening in Greece. The North Americans are much more sympathetic to the Greek case, I think, than the Europeans. They have taken a much longer view and a historical view of what's happening. And again, having a very powerful center, which is, in our case, is the largest in North America, gives us a voice with the media that others do not have. So the media naturally gravitates to Simon Fraser to say, okay, what's going on in Greece? And we're the ones explaining what is happening in Greece, not somebody who may not be as knowledgeable about it.
And is there an explanation that could be provided by Greek Studies Department or another cultural department on why in Greece, entrepreneurship has been along the piecemeal fashion that Mr. Veremis has mentioned, or is that something that should be best addressed by the people that do business in the real world?
You know, it's history. If you look at the history of Greece, Greece was not a country of entrepreneurs. Greece was a country of collectivities. We emerged out of the Ottoman Empire, you know, half a millennium of living within a certain foreign culture that did not encourage uniqueness. It did not encourage independence. We had to learn these skills very soon and very rapidly. And you know, we tend to look at Greece, but if you look at other European countries, some of them have gone through the same cycle. But this is not a unique case in Greece.
And Mr. Veremis, Professor Gerolymatos has been doing Greek studies abroad. You have been doing business on the high-tech end of the industry in Greece, and the high-tech industry is supposedly a prerogative of mostly Western European countries or the United States, possibly India and China lately. How has the experience been for you being in the high-tech industry in Greece?
Just to give everyone context, because obviously they won't know my company, Upstream. Upstream essentially develops software in Greece, but 100% of its sales are in 42 countries around the world, so its markets are abroad. And the kinds of people we employ are mostly computer programmers, engineers. Now, the world is incredibly globalized these days, and communications have become much easier, which means that my development team in Athens, which is about 170 people, have no problem collaborating with our 10 offices around the world, with engineers in different parts of the world, with conferences that they can either physically go to or remotely follow. And I would say they are a very clear example of citizens of the world. And in fact, my reading of the situation in Greece today, the real division, the real problem, is between those of us who feel as if the world is our oyster and have had the cosmopolitan experience of what goods, what positive things this can bring, and the rest of the population that feel threatened by this and have been accustomed to a far more isolated state of being. And you know, the stay in the euro, get out of the euro division conceals these inner thoughts as well. You know, those who are for the euro, not coincidentally, are middle class or upper middle class educated people who have benefited from globalization. Those who are against are people who look at that as a threat. My company is a very good example of a group of people who have blossomed in a very globalized world.
And how could, in both of your opinions, this gap between the pro and anti-euro mentality that Mr. Veremis just described, how can this gap be bridged? Because Professor Mazao wrote an article about a couple of years ago in the New York Times, and he defined very explicitly the Greek problem as a European problem. In Professor Mazao's and in many others' opinions, Greece is an intrinsic part of Europe and an inseparable part of Europe. How can those two groups of Greeks be brought together under a common umbrella and a common vision for the future?
I think the first thing, if we accept, and we should accept, that there is Europe. Europe is an entity. It is a historical, ideological, cultural entity. It must trump economics. I think what's been going on in the last little while is we've reduced the European ideal to numbers, to plus and minuses. I mean, I don't disparage that there's an economic problem, but Europe is more than the sum of its economic problems. There are many factors that are going on. And I think your analogy at the beginning of change and resilience, I think we should be looking at mutation. And we must be very careful that the Europe of today does not mutate into being a gigantic financial firm that lends money and collects interest. The people who thought of the European ideal, who thought of the European Union, they were people who came out of World War II who said, never again. And how did we do that? We do that by making a beautiful entity, a cultural entity, and an entity that focuses on humanity, not pluses and minuses. And I think the Europeans have kind of strayed away from that ideal. And I'm not saying that this is a way to excuse the Greeks, but the focus should be on the European ideal, not the numbers.
My perspective is that the European problem is a separate problem to the Greek problem, in my view. The European problem is an entity that was, had very, very particular values about the mix between free economy and welfare, about humanity, about sort of citizenship being quite different to other places around the world, even the United States. And yes, I would agree that it has now become something that is more closely resembling an economic union along the lines of NAFTA or experiments like that didn't really have a political element to it. I think the true pro-Europeans at the moment are very clearly saying you either go to federalization, full union, or the thing dismantles. Having said that, the Greek problem is a different case. Greek problem is one where a country divided between East and West made a choice in the 70s under Karamanlis to firmly and unequivocally join the West in the form of the European Union. However, there has always been doubt about that. A large part of the population doesn't really share these values, and this constantly comes up. In this particular case, it has come up through a mixture of mismanagement of the economy, cronyism, statism, corruption, and now a buoyant nationalism, destructive nationalism. Now, this is, for me, more a case that where Greece has to resolve its identity problems rather than Europe providing the solution.
And is the manner in which these identity problems could be resolved through the development of creativity and such aspects in those that can develop them? And if so, where do you think the comparative advantage lies for these activities? I mean, you mentioned you employ a lot of programmers. I guess that is an indication that there is a huge population in Greece that possesses the hard skills to do the job right. Are there any comparative advantages that could provide this exit, this avenue for the future?
Given that the Niarchos Foundation has effectively committed to put 100 million euros into effectively what is youth entrepreneurship over the next few years, I think that is a very wise choice. I'll explain why. Most big cities around the world have a shortage of what is most needed right now to make any business or economy work, and that is engineers, computer programmers. Now, Silicon Valley is a known kind of example where there is an abundance of such people, and it's not coincidental that it has done so well. New York has emulated this model as well, and now actually very actively has built a community of engineers. Boston, the same, and most recently, London, by creating the East London Tech City, which in 2008 had 5 companies, and today hosts 15,000 companies in this particular part of London, all of them technology, all of them focused on engineering resources. Now, let's go to Greece. Greece has a relative advantage because, A, it has a very strong engineering culture. Greece was rebuilt from scratch after the war. Engineering was one of the most popular professions and most needed professions. Engineering evolved from civil to mechanical to electrical and now to computer programming. There's a very long line of engineers in Greece. Greece produces through at least 5 excellent universities, a steady flow of highly skilled engineers in Patras, in Crete, in Volos, and in Athens. These engineers, most usually the very best, go and study in places like the MIT or Stanford or Imperial College or at the High in Zurich. And there is an abundance of good Greek engineers. The main reason why I decided to set up Upstream in Greece, I was actually living in London before I started my own company, was precisely because I could find very good engineers here in Athens. In that sense, given that there is a hub being gradually created in Athens of very good engineers and technology companies employing them, you know, this healthy body of people can grow and can influence in a very positive way what is otherwise a very difficult situation.
And Professor Gerolymatos, is there such a hub of academics in the humanities sector that can define theoretical issues that are addressed by various Greece or indeed in Greek study centers overseas?
I think it's slowly coming to that. There isn't right now. I mean, the humanities have taken a severe beating in the West, not just in Greece, but in Europe and in North America. And so much so that a lot of entities, such as the Pentagon, are encouraging people, you know, to go to the humanities and study the world from that perspective and provide the expertise, whether it's the military-industrial complex or business, from the perspective of humanities, which provides skills that, you know, that are beyond the technical skills of business or computing or engineering. And the idea is to marry both at the same time, something I think we are doing very well in Vancouver.
So it seems that despite the crisis, despite the adversities of the last few years, education, at least in hard skills, has been a common theme of most Greeks who study either in Greece or abroad, and they possess the hard skills, and in that sense there has been an investment in the investment in their education is already a sunk cost, and you can take that for granted in the sense that you don't have to do anything else in the future to use that expertise there. You don't have a population that cannot program. You have a population that has mathematicians, has engineers, and they can program. So how can one explain the lack of such a hub like the ones that you mentioned previously?
There's no filter that translates this capacity into the real economy. That's the problem. It's no coincidence that the proximity between hubs like, Silicon Valley and Berkeley and Stanford and the top universities, or Imperial College and East London Tech City, this coexistence of academia and business in Greece doesn't exist at all. One of the challenges for the next few years would be, I guess, primarily through private initiative, to bring these two worlds together much closer, so that the skills of all those people who are de facto studying, because Greek parents will continue investing into their kids' education. They've been doing it for, over 50 years now. Make those skills useful to the real economy is the main challenge. And this is happening through a lot of initiatives that have to do with, I'll give you an example. In my company, we have regular open days where students from various universities come and visit. Obviously, their professors are people we trust. Most of them used to teach in top universities abroad, came back primarily for emotional reasons here and for patriotic reasons. And they bring their top students. We allow them to kind of look into the company and what we do. We then select quite a few of them for internships over the summer. And quite a few of them end up being hired by the company, but even those who don't, get a real sense of how their skills might be relevant to what companies do. So, that is a useful exercise. And finally, I would also say that the actual education system in Greece clearly needs to stop treating private enterprise as the enemy and begin collaborating, so that actually the conundrum of how the Greek economy gets revived in some way is assisted through this process. If you look at it in numbers, there are about 40,000 new companies being created in Greece every year, so no shortage of new companies. Of those, 90% are completely in the non-productive sector, so cafeterias, bars, etc., or pure importers. Through some estimates I was reading from Endeavor, only 1% of those companies, so very, very few companies have the characteristics to help fuel the Greek economy, meaning export by producing value-added goods and services. Only 1%. If this 1% can increase to 10%, then the million unemployed that have been created in Greece over the past 6 years could be absorbed.
And given that you identified a mismatch between the real market and the research, the R&D market, so to speak, in Greek universities, would you say that an initiative like the Stavros Niarchos Foundation's initiative of recharging the youth should focus on bridging that gap, because that would be the way to increase the percentage of these high-tech companies from 1 to 10%?
In my mind, there are two areas that are hold great promise. One is study very carefully the East London Tech City initiative. Athens, fortunately, has a very enlightened mayor, Mayor Kaminis, who very actively wants to create a similar hub in Athens. Obviously has zero funds to do it, very few funds to do it. The idea that you bring any new company with the 1% characteristics that we talked about before in the same place, and these people talk to each other, interact with each other, and university departments begin to operate within this hub, within this environment, can have a massive impact in developing this collaboration and making a big difference. And it's been done before. The recipe is available. It's been done in Israel, it has been done in the States, it's been done in the Scandinavian countries, it's been done most recently in London.
So despite new technologies and social networking and the ability to talk easily face-to-face with someone across the world, the geographic affinity of different enterprises is still an important part of helping a market flourish.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we came in, and I was asked, does it make a difference that you're in Greece and not in California? And the answer is, of course, it does. Because when I'm in California, I'll go out for a coffee and meet 10 other people doing the same thing I do and have incredibly interesting conversations, and innovation comes out of a dialectic process. This is very problematic in Greece, in the way that things work right now. A hub of companies living and working under the same geographical space would have a massive impact. It's no coincidence that this is the way most notable technology hubs have been built around the world. So yes, I think this is an area that the Stavros Niarchos Foundation should certainly look at very carefully.
Professor Gerolymatos, we're talking about the importance of geographic affinity here. Why should someone study Safaris in Canada or London or overseas? Isn't this geographic affinity very important for someone that studies Greek things, even literature?
That's a very good question. I think if we want to understand Greece, you have to study Safaris, whether you're in Greece or outside of Greece. And the more people who study Safaris in Germany or in Holland or in Norway, they'll have a better feeling for the country. Greek literature and culture have been the ambassadors of Greece that has made a very small and rather insignificant country very significant to the world. We need to invest in education overseas in order to be able to have people understand us, in order to be able to generate tourism, investment. Otherwise, if you think of Greece as a physical entity, it's not very big. But Greece has been a huge intellectual entity historically and can be. We are, unfortunately, like I said before, we are declining. We are losing our foothold in Europe intellectually, and we are doing so in North America with noted exceptions. And there has been almost an oversight. You know, Greeks abroad have become an afterthought to Greeks here. And if you look at some statistics, they're quite starking. In Australia, for example, there's about 350,000 Greeks, 250,000 speak Greek, 100,000 don't. The Greek language is disappearing rapidly in North America and starting to in Canada as well. So unless we find ways to maintain that, we will lose the diaspora, but more importantly, we will lose the Philhellenes. Why should someone study Stavros, you know, if there's no reason for it, right? If there's no stimulation for it. Stavros is very important for the soul. Stavros is very important to understand literature, not just Greek, but English literature and other literatures. Greek history is very important to understand in and of itself, but to also understand the histories of other countries, and to understand Europe in particular. I mean, if you subtract Greek history from Europe, what is there? There's not much left. Greece has been the engine of European history and the engine of European civilization. We must reclaim that. We can reclaim that through education. I mean, right now, the fate of Greece is being decided by countries that have not the same kind of deep roots in civilization as Greece. And we're almost being sidelined because we have not focused on our past and our education.
But what do Greek studies have to give for the interests of students or academics in departments that are not necessarily interested in Greece per se? Something that I have in mind, and it could be wrong, please correct me, is, for instance, I guess that the financial crisis that had unraveled from 2008 onwards, and parts of it are still ongoing in Europe, might be informed by research to empirical evidence that can be found in a Greek studies department, so to speak. In that sense, wouldn't a German studies department or a UK studies department have the same value for Europe?
No. No, it wouldn't. Greek studies offer a universality to education. German studies are focused on Germany exclusively, and I've studied German history, and it's quite interesting. However, Greece and the idea of Greece transcends borders. That has been the fascination with Greece throughout time. Because by studying something that in Greek, by studying Homer, by studying Aeschylus, even by studying 19th century Greek history, you understand your own. That's something that Greece can offer that other studies cannot. So our students who come, and they vote with their feet. I mean, we don't have one or two students, we have thousands of students who are in engineering, who are in chemistry, who are in computer sciences, who want to come and study Alexander the Great. He fascinates them. He touches something about them. They want to come and study Greek civilization. There's something universal about it. Why do thousands of Chinese students want to take Greek? Because it's fascinating. It has applications for their own civilization. It has that universal quality that other studies do not have.
Well, I suggest we open the floor to some questions before we move on to our electronic voting questions that have become a theme of our annual conference. Any questions? Gentlemen? Mr. Chamis at the front, and then the lady over there, and then the gentleman with the blue shirt. Priority, please, over there to Mr. Chamis, who raised his hand first. Don't fall asleep.
Thank you very much for your very interesting comments. The post-war history shows us that in the Greek balance of payments, the biggest contributors have been traditionally foreign remittances, tourism, and shipping in a variable order. The most common indicator now is that we start suffering the so-called brain drain, which is anathema to all. Are you worried about this, or you view this as an exportation and unemployment?
Yes, both of you. We can start with Professor Gerolymatos.
You know, I do worry about the brain drain, and I believe that and the work that we're doing with our center is designed not to take people away from Greece. We'd like to bring people back to Greece. We have the SNF New Media Lab, which has half its staff in Athens and the other half in Vancouver. And we would like to expand our footprint here and keep people in Greece. Because like you, I am concerned that a lot of smart young people are going to pack up and leave because of the economic crisis. And we should think of creative ways to educate them abroad if necessary, but to bring them back. But more importantly, educate them here.
Mr. Veremis?
Well, according to estimates, in the last 6 years, 200,000 of the very best people have left, mostly young. My view on the matter is I would much rather have young, capable, ambitious people pursuing their dreams wherever they can do that, rather than perish in a place that's going nowhere. These people will remain an asset for the country. I'm a natural optimist. I think they will return when things get better, and they will be vital in rebuilding this country. And if anything else, they will come back with knowledge and paradigms that are much needed here. And I think that even if you look at a lot of the companies, the successful companies being built in Greece in the past 10 years, most of them have been built by Greeks who lived for a number of years abroad, brought back a lot of valuable skills, and set up these businesses here. And they are qualitatively different types of businesses to the traditional Greek ones. So yes, it pains me that people are leaving. On the other hand, I do believe that they will come in very handy and they will be very useful if you take a longer-term view of Greek history.
The lady over there with the white shirt.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conference. It's Maria Antonakis from the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo, Canada. I just had a comment and then I guess a question. I have a friend who's an engineer and started a large company in Canada that he exited and is now a venture capitalist. And he says, he has a quote that says, "Engineering is the how and humanities is the why." And I think this conversation made me consider an adage that I think about, which is STEM. I work at a physics institute and I am an opera singer, and I just love STEM. I think it's very important, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But I add an A to that, which is STEAM, because I think there's a big connection between the humanities and the sciences, obviously. So my question is, it seems to me that this conversation is about 21st century skills, and it feels to me like the combination of the innovation and online, which UBC has done, and then Mr. Veremis, is your focus on technology is fairly profound and possibly a way through. Is there any connection, do you think, in this area around innovation, arts, humanities, and engineering technology?
Yes, I think the ideal is to have computer programmers or engineers who read Cavafy or can recite Cavafy. And wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, isn't that what the ancient ideal has been, that the rounded human being? I think we have gone through a phase in the late 20th century where we were going through ultra-specialization. And that was not necessarily very good. I think the more Renaissance approach to life and to education makes for more productive people and more productive employees.
Yeah, I mean, I would second that. The most successful people I've met in business fundamentally have a common skill, which is that they have a sense of what people want, what products people want to buy. To be able to have the ability to read people across many different parts of the world, especially if you're trying to build a global business, you must have the background, the infrastructure, the education to do that. And just by merely having studied computer science, you cannot do that. The people who have backgrounds in either political philosophy or pure philosophy or classics or history usually are massively advantaged in that sense, because they have a better sense of who we are, you know, how people think, how different countries might have completely different backgrounds. And at the end of the day, business is about knowing what to sell to who, when, right? And you're very right. The how comes after.
Thank you. The gentleman with the blue T-shirt.
Καλησπέρα σας. Δημητρόπουλος ονομάζομαι, Ανάστος. Είμαι δικηγόρος και πρόεδρος μιας επιστημονικής εταιρείας που ασχολείται με την ευεργεσία. Θα ήθελα να ρωτήσω ποιος είναι ο ρόλος του ελληνισμού και ιδιαίτερα των ανθρωπιστικών σπουδών στην υποδιαμόρφωση παγκοσμιοποίηση, με τη διάσταση της παγκοσμιοποίησης των αγορών και με το πρότυπο την οικουμενικότητα αξιών. Και σε μια δεύτερη φάση, ένα δεύτερο ερώτημα, πώς βλέπατε την άποψη του κυρίου Νανόπουλου σε μια πρόσφατη ομιλία του που μιλούσε για μια κυβέρνηση των διακεκριμένων επιστημόνων του εξωτερικού, εν είδη μιας σύγχρονης φιλικής εταιρείας, ούτως ώστε η Ελλάδα να γίνει μια Silicon Valley, μια κοιλάδα γνώσης, όπως έλεγε η καποδίστρια συντροφή της Οικουμένης, και όχι μόνο το Μαϊάμι των Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών της Ευρώπης. Ευχαριστώ θερμός.
In a nutshell, the question had two parts. One is what's the role of Hellenism in shaping universal values, and whether an administrative government of scientists would be better equipped to implement an entrepreneurship hub or entrepreneurship climate in Greece. Is that correct, more or less? Thank you. Should we do it the same?
I think, go ahead, you know. I mean, I have serious doubts about a group of professors running a government, you know. I've seen what they do to universities. So.
We answered that then.
Let's start from the other question. Brand equity exists for products, right? There are good products, bad products, good reputation, bad reputation. It also exists for countries. You know, when I get on a plane and try to go sell my products in faraway places, you know, anywhere from Angola all the way to Vietnam, or, you know, in places that essentially I know very little about. It has been an advantage that I'm Greek, in the sense that Greece does have a positive brand equity, let's call it, okay? And most recently, I have experienced also the reverse of that, which is the negativity that has also been created around the Greek crisis. In my mind, building departments such as yours and these kinds of efforts have a real impact in Greek business. Because, you know, part of your reputation is what your company does, but also where it's based. So those who think this is irrelevant are very wrong, and investing in improving our brand equity and making it known to more people that actually the Renaissance, which is effectively the birthplace of the modern world, was very much inspired by ancient Greece, and that this is not dead history, this is very much alive and has a continuity in time through the Greek language. I wouldn't say anything else beyond that, has a lot of importance, yeah, definitely. Now, about the government, perhaps a government of professors may not be appropriate, but the thought is correct in the sense that there is a massive mismatch in my mind, that this is the source of my personal frustration every day, between the disconnect of the skills that exist in this country, the prospects this country has in so many areas of its economy, and at the same time how badly it's being run. Okay, and in a situation like that, when you've consistently seen this mismanagement happen over not 5 months, but over years, yes, of course, in situations like that, outsiders, whether they're professors or businessmen or accomplished people who know what they're doing and love this country, certainly at this particular point in time would help a great deal. Now, how you get there is a very difficult question to answer.
I just wish to add, and I mean, a democracy is as strong as its weakest link. And of course, oligarchies are that, and we want to have specialists and people with, specific expertise to be the government. But are we prepared to trade away democracy for something so selective? The idea is train the youth of today so that the politicians who emerge out of them have that expertise.
Totally agree.
Last question back there, please.
I just want to make a modest proposal at the very end. You were talking about contemporary Greek culture and what it has to offer, but what it doesn't have to offer is a support system in publishing and in the distribution of cultural products from Greece. There have been moments, flashes, when around the film of Anthony Quinn of Zorba the Greek, all of Kazantzakis' novels were readily available. There have been moments where Greek music has been very popular and Greek composers have been visible. But in recent years, actually, it's very hard to come by books by Greek authors, music by Greek composers, and so on in the international distribution system. And one place where foundation money could go would be to the support of some kind of publishing program for recordings, films, and for books that would get these things out into the marketplace so that people could learn it for the first time or be reminded of it if they once had. The Pléiade in France has been publishing the classics of France and adding to them constantly. In Latin America, there are a number of publishers that publish uniform, annotated editions of the great writers of Latin America. There are all kinds of entities like this which in a given year will not sell very many copies, but over a period of time of commitment makes it clear that these cultures are here to stay, that they have a wide readership, and so on and so forth. You mentioned Stavros. It's very hard to come by his poems in English translation, although they do exist. Ritsos is very hard to come by. Kafafi has the benefit of, number one, it's a dubious benefit perhaps, but Lawrence Durrell. It has the benefit of translations done in another period where there was great enthusiasm for him. And it also, of course, has a benefit of gay liberation, which has made a lot of people read him who would not otherwise have done so. But I think you have to reconsider how Greece can actively promote the products that it has, cultural products, that are in fact international, but are very, very hard to come by.
Thank you, Robert. Professor Gerolymatos, is this a new potential direction that Hellenic Studies Centers can take?
Absolutely. I think that Hellenic Studies should definitely bring modern Greek works to the general public. And I can tell you for a fact, in China, they're literally thirsting for Greek works. I wish we had the means to translate and offer them to people in China, but to people in Europe and people in North America, I know that our students in Vancouver definitely like it when we could translate some for them. They love it very much. And I think it is an important thing for a civilization to have its culture available to the world.
And does this also hold for modern Greek works of art and studies like Robert Storr mentioned, or is it mostly for the classics?
No, especially the modern works. I mean, let's not forget the classics, but there's a lot of important, critically important modern works in poetry, in literature, in music and film that people would love to have if they could get their hands on it.
So it seems that there is an agreement that the demand is there, both of you, but somehow the supply right now cannot meet that demand, and that could also be a point of future development. Thank you. Well, we have just about 4 minutes, so maybe it's time to do our voting on our electronic questions. Most of these questions we have discussed already, so we can go through them quite quickly. So this is the first question. Which is more important for success in general? IQ, grit, i.e. resilience, emotional intelligence, or luck? Start voting now. Okay, emotional intelligence then. Well, I guess that fits well with our discussion here, because one of the not so dark things about Greece right now is that there are lots of people with skills, and it seems that what we need to make these skills work is to fit the pieces together, and I guess that might have to do a bit with emotional intelligence. Okay, next question. If you were to choose one, what is more important for an academic breakthrough or for a successful business endeavor? It's a similar question, but let's see what you think. Start voting now. So hard work. So we have the idea of resilience again, and it's very interesting because one of my favorite musicians is Nick Cave, and for those who like your rock and roll, I mean, you always think he has great ideas to make 20 albums, but when they actually ask him, how can you make so many great albums? He says, I rent a small place, I put my suit on every day, and I go and I write my songs, one song at a time, and it takes time, and I do it. So hard work, it seems, permeates everyone's idea of what makes things tick. Next question, please. The solution to the current Greek crisis lies in the need to develop new models and tools, the better use and implementation of existing models and tools. This is an important question, especially for the foundation, when in the Recharging the Youth, in the context of the Recharging the Youth initiative, we get requests and we decide where to allocate our funding. So start voting now, please. Okay, so it seems, what do you make of this answer?
In the things that we discussed before, I think you start with what's already been done in other places, in other countries. It'd be foolish not to, given that you can see what worked and what didn't work. And then once you've done that, I think you go to creating completely new models after. Greeks are often too hasty in trying to create idiosyncratic models and almost not studying what's already there. And so, that's clearly my view.
I agree.
Okay. And last question. We've discussed this in great detail during this panel, but here's the question. The workforce in Greece lacks business skills, entrepreneurial spirit, hard skills, soft skills, nothing. Start voting now. Okay, I would say almost evenly divided between business skills and entrepreneurial spirit. I'm surprised about the hard skills answer, actually, given our discussion.
The problem, the main problem is experience. That's the truth. A graduate from the United States or London works for a period of time in a top company. And most people who start a business, let's not forget, is a minority. The people who start their own business, are only very few. And then, after they get this experience, then they go off and they build their own business. In Greece, this training ground in the real economy of very solid companies, there are only few of them, right? So I think the hard skills become a problem because it's not something you get out of university. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Thank you all for your patience. Mr. Veremis, Professor Gerolymatos, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.